During chapter 4, we're given tons of clues about the story of Poppy playtime through notes, voice lines, and especially VHS tapes. But what if we're looking in the wrong places? What if the writing was on the wall? Literally. Once we make it to Safe Haven, we're dragged into a long conversation with Poppy, and then immediately after an even longer conversation with Doey. But afterwards, we're then allowed to freely roam Safe Haven and see how the toys have been living all these years. We see they're living in tents, have barely any food, and it seems the only form of entertainment they have is a Nightmare Critters VHS tape, cause it literally plays on loop all the time in the room near the infirmary. But we get to see a whole lot more when we look at the drawings on the walls. The first one I want to look at is a drawing which literally shows the prototype feeding employees to the toys. Then we're gonna look at the one where Doey is protecting the toys with his arms. Then this smaller drawing, which shows all of the smiling critters, presumably the bigger bodies versions. And lastly, what seems to be a giant war that happened in the Playtime Co. factory. And so, starting with the prototype drawing, it's definitely the biggest out of all of them, but also has probably the most interpretations like you cannot imagine. In the drawing, we see on the very right side a scary looking drawing of Catnap, but what's interesting is he's dispensing the red smoke while also looking supernaturally scary, which could mean that whoever drew this was put into a trance by Catnap and also saw him in a nightmare form, just like we saw in the end of chapter 3. But in the red smoke, we see it seems to be 3 orphans asleep, as they seem to have human bodies. But if we go a little further left, you'll see 4 different toys, each with a utensil and plate in their hands. However, with the text surrounding them saying not eating that and gross, we can see that whatever they're about to eat is very gross. And if you look up, you'll see a dangling employee in what seems to be a prison outfit. Now, we know that Playtime Co. had a prison, but for them to have prison uniforms that fit humans is a bit odd. But by the way that the prototype is holding the body right above the toys who look like they're ready to eat, it seems that this is how he's been feeding them for all these years. But immediately to the left, we see that everybody is extremely happy and they have an abundance of all of their favorite foods. We see Dogday with a big old smile, Kissy waving at us with her own smile, and overall the kids could eat basically anything they want. And so far, this drawing seems to be a parallel between their past, when they used to eat whatever they liked, with the present being the prototype feeding them literal bodies. And we can confirm that this is true, since in the Untitled tape, Poppy says she finds the fact that the toys are eating the bodies to be disgusting.
Prototype says we can't leave. He explained everything, and he's right. We can't leave. It's too risky. We can't ever let it happen to us or anyone ever again. Doesn't make me feel better about the bodies, though. What he was saying about them, I know there's not really another option. The toys will starve otherwise. They'll die. But it's still disgusting.
However, this drawing might not just be a parallel between past and future, but instead what could have been happening all this time. Because when we look just a little further to the left, we see all of the kids asleep while still in the red smoke. And so it's possible if we look at this painting from right to left, it could actually be telling us a story. We see that Catnap put the kids to sleep while the prototype was feeding them the employees' bodies. However, the prototype might know that they won't eat human bodies, and so he could have commanded Catnap to dispense the red smoke in order to put them into a hallucination just like we experienced in chapter 3. And that's when they see all of their favorite foods and everything seems to be super blissful and they'll eat whatever they want. But in reality, they were still asleep in the red smoke, dreaming as if they just ate whatever they wanted, when in reality, they ate one of the employees. Or you could interpret this another way, where the blue area represents the toys in Safe Haven, that they're safe from the prototype's control and get to eat the real food. However, on the other side of Safe Haven, aka those who are not inside of it, is where they're forced to eat the bodies in or under the control of the prototype and Sawyer. And you might be wondering where I'm getting Harley Sawyer from, but you'll see what I mean if you look at the 20 eyeballs above the painting. And this theory could make sense since the text says, "Together we are safe." So if you're one of the toys who's on the good guy's side, you're eating real food and are also free of the prototype and Catnap's control. But let me tell you why this theory might not work. Throughout Safe Haven, when you go up to the toys, they pretty much all have voice lines about how they've been starving for weeks and have barely been able to get by, with some of them even thinking that they're gonna die.
My stomach, it hurts. Mine too. When's the last time you ate? I can't remember, honestly. Which'll kill us first, you think? The doctor or hunger? I prefer not to even think about it.
And so, if the theory that the blue is Safe Haven, where they could eat whatever they wanted, it wouldn't really make sense for all the toys to be starving. But there is a counter argument to this counter argument. If the toys are just now starving and wondering if they're gonna die, it's possible that in the past they actually did have a lot of food. As in the red tape, we hear Hoppy Hopscotch and Doey talking about a toy who just got bit, probably by a nightmare critter. But also in the tape, it seems to have been some sort of supply run for what could have been food.
Hoppy, what's going on?
We were trying to bring supplies back up to the elevator, but we got jumped. Had to turn all the way back around. They took everything we had. Right after one of them bit my leg.
How is he, Doc?
Not too bad. He'll live.
And because Home Sweet Home housed a lot of orphans, they would have needed a lot of food, which could have led to the toys making supply runs back and forth so that they could continuously eat the food that they used to as kids. However, it seems to be that the theory of hallucinating is correct, because when we look in the blue section, we see text like "so hungry" and the text saying "this isn't food" while pointing to a toy train. And so if they're still saying that they're hungry, meanwhile there's a whole buffet of their favorite foods in front of them, it could point to the fact that they're hallucinating. And what supports this even more is the fact that we see a chicken leg with text saying "I love chicken" and also a text saying "this is not chicken." So if the toys are saying that it's not chicken but yet they love it, it makes me think that they're hallucinating this all, and that the chicken that they think they're eating in reality could be the human's leg or arm. But it really seems like that either theory could be true, so let me know down in the comments which one you think it is. But now let's look at the drawing where Doey is using his arms, seemingly to protect the other toys in Safe Haven. And this one was the very first drawing that we saw in one of the trailers. Here we can see different toys all shielded by Doey, and this seems to be a representation of Safe Haven. We can see that there's a blue background only really surrounding Doey's arms and also poking out a little bit on the sides. And outside of this blue, we can see all of Harley Sawyer's eyes looking right at them. And to even further push this point, we have to look at one of the last tapes in the game where Doey almost left the toys behind to escape the factory. In the tape, he says that although he can make a run for it, he should instead stay to protect the toys because they don't have anyone else to protect them. But it gets even more interesting when he brings up Poppy, because he says that she left them behind and he has no idea what she's doing. And he even says that Poppy used to lead the toys and tell them what to do, but ever since she left, now Doey has to step up to the plate and give all of the other toys guidance. And you know big fella don't want to do that. Come on now.
The others, they look to me to know what to do. to know where to go. For a long while, we had Poppy to tell us, go here, go there, do this. And it all made sense, too. Poppy was nice. I can't find Poppy anywhere. I don't know what happened or where she went. But it's scary here without her. I could make for the exit, but there are others inside. Others that aren't like me. They're hungry and scared like I am, but they're not me. I'm going back.
Which would further explain the other part of this drawing, which shows Poppy outside of Safe Haven with a giant X over her and text saying she left us. And so if you looked at the drawings before beating the game, you would already know that Poppy abandoned the other toys before watching the tape. And the last part of this drawing is in the midst of all of Sawyer's eyes. We can see a security camera, and throughout the game we can see several security cameras that follow our every move. And so the toys seem to understand very well that Sawyer has eyes all over the factory. But before we get to the most lore-filled drawing, I want to quickly go over this one, which is the first ever to have a green background. It has all of the smiling critters except for Bubba Bubbafint and Crafty Corn, which could mean that these are the toys which were made into bigger bodies, as we know that Catnap, Dogday, and Hoppy Hopscotch all had their own bigger bodies. And so if Picky Picky, Bobby Bearhug, and Kickin' Chicken also had their own bigger bodies, this would be all of them. And although this doesn't seem to be anything on the surface, it could actually show us a lot about Playtime Co.'s past, because we see text which says, "Will we be saved? And please save us." And the first suspect here is the prototype, because in one of the chapter 3 tapes, when Catnap is talking to Leith Pierre, he literally says the prototype will save us.
Theo, nobody's gonna save you. This prison is where you belong. We'll let you out here and there to go see the kids in play care, but your home is here. And as for the prototype, his home is in the labs. This is your life now. Get used to it.
But what makes this even more interesting is that in a tweet made by Mob, they gave us a little bit more information about Dogday. In the tweet, we see that Dogday was by all accounts unconditionally loyal to the prototype. But in chapter 3, we literally see him being chained up and tortured because he was deemed a heretic. So if he's being tortured, then how could he have been unconditionally loyal to the prototype? Well, it's possible that he was loyal to the prototype for a time, including all of the other smiling critters. But after some time, they decided to switch sides after realizing what was really going on. At first, they could have seen the prototype as someone who could have saved them from the torture, which they received from the Playtime Co. employees. But after realizing that the prototype could have been just as bad or even worse than the employees, their loyalty could have shifted and they would have fought for themselves. But what makes this even more interesting is that in the drawing we see that Catnap and Dogday were best friends. And so combining this with the fact that Dogday was apparently unconditionally loyal to the prototype, it could have been that Dogday and Catnap both worshipped him at some point, and Dogday decided to stop while Catnap didn't. And so this could have torn apart their friendship, as Catnap's undying loyalty would be to the prototype. And Dogday does tell us that it was Catnap who put him in that prison and tortured him.
That thing, Catnap, the prototype is his god, and this is what he does to heretics. These little toys follow Catnap to avoid that very fate, and in return, they are fed. We try to fight it, the prototype's control. I am the last of the smiling critters.
but because of their past relationship, it's possible that Catnap killed all of the other smiling critters, but kept Dogday alive to be tortured and hopefully change his mind. But when we see Dogday, we can see that he was still against the prototype, which is when a bunch of the mini smiling critters all climbed into his body and possessed him in order to try and kill us. And now Catnap truly is the last of the smiling critters. But lastly, let's go over what seems to be a literal war painting between the good toys and the bad toys. We see a massive drawing spreading across 3 different walls. On the left side, we see toys such as Kissy Missy and Hoppy Hopscotch all outlined in blue, but on the other side, we see toys such as Boxy Boo and Pianosaurus outlined in red. But what makes me think that this is a war painting is the fact that there are 2 sides outlined in different colors. We see a piece of text saying 40 dead, and we also see a giant crane which one of the toys is climbing just like Doey did in the final boss fight, which leads me to believe at some point in time there was a massive battle between those on the prototype side and those on our side. On both sides, we can see toys laying down with X's over their faces, as well as the fact that Boxy Boo's face is completely scribbled out, which is a little bit interesting as he doesn't have an X over his face like the other dead toys, but instead they scribbled him out, which leads me to believe that he either died in the battle or it's possible that he died sometime afterwards and they decided to scribble him out. But it seems that this is Mob Entertainment's way of confirming that Boxy Boo is dead, because ever since he appeared in Project Playtime, fans were hyped that maybe he would show up in the main game, but it seems that Mob doesn't want to use him for the story. But this piece of text is kind of confusing. On the bad guy side, we see text saying we are losing, which makes me think that the bad guys are losing since it's on their side. But since the good toys are obviously the ones who drew this painting, then maybe they put the text on that side to show that they're losing to the bad guys. And if you combine that with the fact that there is text saying 40 dead on the good guy side, it's possible that they are really losing, which also seems to be supported by the fact that Hoppy Hopscotch is no longer alive, and in his tape they were going to get supplies to bring back to Playcare, but we now know that the toys are nowhere to be found in Playcare, but instead are only living inside of Safe Haven. And with dwindling numbers as well as running out of food, it seems that the prototype side is about to win the war. But for plot convenience, we now showed up, and it's possible we could end up killing the prototype and freeing all of the toys. But aside from the war, we can see a drawing of Poppy on the bad guy's side, which is saying she left us. However, she isn't outlined in red like the rest of them, but in white. And it seems to be the same way in all of the other Poppy drawings. And so if they put her on the bad guy side but didn't outline her red, does this mean that she's neutral? Well, it kind of seems like she is, because in the tape where Doey says that he's not gonna leave the toys behind, he says that Poppy already left the toys behind. And so if she did do this but still helped them for a little while in the past, it's possible that they're confused about which side she's on. But with the red X's over her drawings, it seems to be that they think of her as a bad guy, and it's only when she shows up with us and Kissy that we hear toys saying that they don't know whether or not they can trust her, which should have been our first clue since she literally did the exact same thing to us in the ventilation block. But this also shows that there might be more to Poppy's story than we thought. Your first thought after Poppy left us was probably that she wanted to just save her own life. However, if she's already abandoned the toys in Safe Haven, abandoned us, and is even talking to the prototype, which is shown by the untitled tape.
Prototype says we can't leave. Not now, not ever. He explained everything, and he's right. We can't leave. It's too risky.
Then this could only mean one thing. Poppy is not a good guy, and she ain't a good gal either, which to be honest is very obvious now. But it goes deeper than that, because it's possible that she's actually helping the prototype to kill off the rest of the toys in the factory, as once we make it to Safe Haven, Poppy tells us her plan to literally blow up the entire place, including all of the other toys. But by the way that she's speaking, it sounds like she doesn't want to die with the rest of them, but wants to live.
The plan is this. We'll fill the foundation with smoke and line it with old mining charges. Then once you, me, and Kissy have freed the orphans, our friends here will blow this place sky high. That's our revenge.
Which is the biggest double standard I've ever seen in my entire life, bro. She wants to kill every single toy in the factory to put the past behind and stop all the torture, but yet she wants to live? Y'all listen, chapter 5 grab pack finna be a pair of clippers. We just gonna shave Poppy bald as revenge, bro. I'm calling it. But if we piece all of these facts together with the war painting, it all starts to make sense. If the toys were the ones doing very well, but after Poppy left them, they're now losing the war and are barely surviving in Safe Haven, then it leads me to believe that Poppy could have actually been telling the prototype and the other bad toys how to kill off the good toys, which would align with her plan to get rid of everything the factory has ever created. But then this would also mean that when Poppy runs away in the end of chapter 4, she wasn't running away from the prototype, but running to the prototype. Sorry, I didn't mean to get all out like that. But listen, think about it. The bombs only went off after she left. The prototype also only threatened her to be put back into a case. And so with the catnap and the prototype painting, the smiling critters holding hands, and what seemed to be a giant battle painting, we can see that the toys in Safe Haven have been through a lot. And the toys that have managed to survive are probably less than 10% of the toys which were originally living in the factory. But now that we're here, it seems that we were protecting the toys for a time, as it also seems that the prototype doesn't want to kill us. He's had the opportunity to kill us multiple times, but yet he hasn't. Or we just got that dog in us, you feel? And hold up, are you telling me it's just a coincidence that Poppy told both Doey and us to leave Safe Haven before it blew up? I'm gonna mention this every time I can, y'all, because she told us to come back to Safe Haven, yet she survived the explosion. At the very least, could we have gotten bald Poppy with like the same way Kissy Missy looked, like one side of her head just burnt to a crisp, no hair, no eyebrows, no lashes, just burnt black. Charred. And now it seems like the only survivors are Poppy and Kissy, with Poppy probably being the reason that the entire thing is now kapoof. So now all we really have left is Kissy, and even then she's now separated from us and her right arm. But with all of this being said, when chapter 5 finally comes out, I'm honestly just gonna be looking at the walls, cause this seems to be where most of the lore is placed. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on this video right here.